The 360 on Energy and Carbon, hosted by 360 Energy. Gerald J. Leonard offers a unique productivity approach to accomplishing more every day. Gerald J. Leonard, PMP, PFMP, and CIQ coach. He's a publishing editor, CEO, and founder of the Leonard Productivity Intelligence Institute, as well as the CEO of Turnberry Premier, a strategic project portfolio management and IT governance firm based in Washington, D.C. Gerald is also an author, TEDx speaker, management guru, and importantly, a bass player. He brings all these traits and skills into his presentation and interviews. Now let's get into the episode with Gerald. Welcome back, Dave, John, and Gerald.
Good to be back.
Good to be back.
It is a pleasure. And Gerald, thanks so much for coming back on this second podcast with us.
No problem.
Okay, falls to me to start this off. A simple question, but then the answer may not be. How have customer expectations around corporate sustainability evolved in recent years?
You know, as companies are beginning to get a little bit more sophisticated around this, especially the ones who have been practicing ESG for a while, they're now knowing what to ask for and what to look for. And, you know, around the corporate sustainability areas, one is not just carbon accounting, but it's community and society. What are we doing in that social component, and how are we making a difference in that area, as well as the overall corporate governance? Again, it's a team sport for the organization to get everyone involved and to have long-term impact on not just the financial, and it's kind of like the triple P, right? The planet, the people, the profit, but it looks again across the organization. Customers are looking for and are much more aware of the sustainability practices, and they're looking for companies to demonstrate. Like I said, I think in the earlier episode, I said about going to Chipotle, which is just having lunch, right? And then, but getting a receipt that tells me that they are aware of the carbon footprint that they're having in how they're preparing their food. And their goal is to reduce that carbon footprint as they're making my lunch, if you will. Employees are looking more into it, the environment, human rights, but then also in the corporate area, I think they're getting more sophisticated and focused on suppliers, right? Because they realize that the supply chain is also a part of their footprint and process and how that plays a part in it.
Yeah. I think we said in the earlier one that this is happening and you can't ignore it, and it's probably going to disadvantage you as a business if you do try to ignore it, isn't it?
Exactly. You know, I was just thinking about this one example from one book I read where, in fact, you could actually just go to Walmart/sustainability, and they have a questionnaire for their suppliers. And they have what's called a supplier sustainability index. And they ask you questions about energy and climate, material efficiency, natural resources, and people in the community. And they want to know, how are you as a supplier meeting those goals, and what kind of impact is that going to have as you bring your numbers into our organization? Is that going to help or hurt our own, as Walmart, our own sustainability goals? Because if it's going to hurt, then you might not become a supplier, or you may lose some of your business. Yeah. And so it really has an economical impact as companies are getting really serious and more sophisticated around this area.
Yeah, true.
So, Gerald, just carrying on with that initial thought, what sectors or industries are you seeing the biggest shifts in how customers demand sustainability?
I would definitely say in the food industry, in the transportation industry, and tech industries. Obviously with data centers, you know, the green tech, with food prep, and just all of the things that go into that. And then in transportation, you know, working with departments of transportation and how they're using sustainable practices and even updated technologies, and how AI is playing a big part of that. And there's this cross collaboration that's beginning to happen between true sustainability practices and then leveraging AI to enhance that and make it even better. But also retail, you think of the big companies like Amazon and again, Walmart. So there are a number of industries that are really focused on it. And what I love about the relationship I have with Greenlee is their platform allows companies of all different sizes and sectors to, because every individual industry is different in some ways and they have to measure things differently. And again, having a tour guide that has industry knowledge, but also is especially a specialist in sustainability makes such a big difference.
Thank you.
So we've made the case for sustainability pretty well,
Sure.
but a lot of people see that there's a conflict, if you like, between sustainability and profitability. I'm not necessarily sure that's true, but people do see that. So how do companies balance sustainability expectations and maintaining their profitability?
Sure. Sustainability is really a journey for companies. And there's a 5 stage journey. In fact, there was a book on Sustainability Champions guidebook that talked about a 5 stage sustainability journey, if you will. And, first it's that idea of pre-compliance and then finally just getting to compliance where you're beginning to comply with some of the rules out there. But then you start realizing that, hey, this is really good for business. So you go beyond compliance. Then you really start understanding the impact of sustainability on your business and you end up with an integrated strategy. And then it becomes a passion where you realize that, hey, sustainability is growing up and that sustainability is also good for business. And as I said earlier, companies are seeing that with strong sustainability practices, they're having increased revenue and market share. They're decreasing their energy expense, waste expense, material expense. They're increasing their employee productivity and retention, and they're hiring more conscious employees. And they're also avoiding certain risks around their strategy and their operational risk, which is actually leveraging or having an impact on the bottom line of their business. So when you really get into it and you get to past the pre-compliance that, oh, I got to do this, to, okay, I'm doing it. Wow, I'm seeing some differences and I'm seeing some changes to the bottom line. What if we get passionate about this? Then you begin to see the real benefit of sustainability to your business.
Okay, very good. Gerald, as businesses undertake this journey in sustainability, and we've talked about all the benefits associated, but how do they effectively communicate this to their customers so the customers know the type of work that they've done?
Sure. It really starts with being transparent, right? Transparent with your employees, transparent with your current customers, and also putting it out on your website and just making it something that you're communicating across the board as part of your brand and all of the logos that you're going after that, let's say, as you go through the GHG admissions or assessment process, or you go to the CDP report, or you do the science-based targets. One thing about the science-based target organization is that once you are in compliance, they put you on their website so that you're able to have those bragging rights, if you will, that, hey, we're compliant. And that is going to attract, again, customers, because customers want to do business with companies that are, thinking this way and have a sustainable business, especially if you're also giving back socially. That's a whole nother way, as you're donating and getting involved in charity work and so on, that you are espousing that you have these sustainable practices. You're going to begin to attract customers. You're going to attract talent, investors, and so on, because they're going to see all the things that you're doing. Again, when I initially got into this and really learned the nuts and bolts and started practicing it, I shared it with some of my people in my network, and I was then invited to do a presentation for the U.S. Department of Commerce around, sustainability, especially for the SME market. Because again, many of those organizations aren't aware of all the rigor that it's going to take for sustainability, and yet that train is coming where they will have to comply, because if they are part of the supply chain for Fortune 500, they're going to be required to get on board.
Thanks for that, Gerald. Can you discuss any emerging technologies or innovations that are helping companies meet customer sustainability demands?
Sure. When you look at technologies like blockchain and AI and the idea of sustainability and its transparency, one of the things that I've noticed after even I was at a conference where I was actually talking to a number of Fortune 500 companies, because it was They were on the floor kind of, sharing their wares and looking for suppliers. And it was interesting, they were comfortable with scope 1 and scope 2 of the whole process, but because scope 3 is dealing with the value chain and is at a detail level, they were struggling to find all of the right solutions or holistic solutions that could solve those problems. So things like AI and more sophisticated data analytics can help with that. And also, many of the areas around around this sustainability area can be seen in silos, like the GHG accounting or SBTI strategies or supplier engagement or the life cycle process or the CSRD compliance. They can be seen as silos, but there are organizations that have brought all of those mechanisms or all of those areas under one umbrella, where you're able to follow their process, and then you can click and check all the boxes when it comes to, hey, are you compliant with your GSG? Do you have a policy? Do you have processes? And that's a big deal for a small business that's trying to make inroads to these big companies, to be able to say that, hey, we can check all the boxes when it comes to ESG, and we're giving back to community, and we have the policies, and we have that third party validation that we're doing things the right way. That, the technologies are there, and they're also growing and emerging, but it's very validating when you can do that as well.
Gerald, this has been a great discussion on customer expectations and corporate sustainability. To end off this episode, what is the biggest takeaway for our listeners?
The biggest takeaway is to remember and just visualize that sustainability is a three-legged stool, right? You have people, profits, and planet. You have the economic leg, you have the environmental leg, and you have the social leg. If you're missing any one of those legs, you got a wobbly stool. And it's going to be hard to actually sit down, if you will, and just think about that as a metaphor to have your organization have a solid footing in this space. But if you have, you're leveraging these processes around sustainability and the environment, the economics and social, and then it's going to impact your profits of your business. It's also going to help you retain customers. So I would just say visualize the three-legged stool when you think about sustainability, and that'll help you determine whether you are checking all the boxes for yourself.
Thanks for that, Gerald. Dave, what's your biggest takeaway?
I want to pick up on what was stated here. And I think the biggest, just picking up what Gerald was saying, is that really if people focus on the planet, the companies will be profitable. That's the key part that I think most people don't appreciate or understand. So I think it's well stated.
Thanks for that, Dave. John, what's your biggest takeaway?
I think it's one that resonates with a number of thoughts that we've had over the years in what we do. Sustainability is a team sport, and in our work we have found there can be well-meaning individuals, but they can only get so far. You need a team to win.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for another great discussion, Dave, John, Gerald. Have a great day.
Thanks so much, Gerald. Really appreciate it.
That's all for today's episode of the 360 on Energy and Carbon podcast. Thanks for listening. Make sure to check us out on our website at 360energy.net and follow us on LinkedIn at 360 Energy Inc. Tune in to our podcast on Apple Music, Spotify, Anchor, or other listening platforms by searching the 360 on Energy and Carbon. You can watch the video recording and subscribe on YouTube at 360 Energy Inc. Email us your feedback at podcast@360energy.net or comment on our LinkedIn posts. See you next week.